I have spouses who, after their spouse has retired from the military, and their spouse is like, hey, babe, it's all on you now. You can go and, do your career and all of that. But they've been out of the workforce so long, there's like, I don't know where to begin. And they feel hopeless. And it's like, oh, no, 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 no. Not when you're on the phone with me. We're not going to feel hopeless.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here with another person from Hire Heroes USA. We're happy to have, we're 2 in and we've got 200 more to go. So we're going to get the whole Hire Heroes USA team on at some point. That's the goal. But we're back here with Arika Urena, and she is going to be discussing with us things about the military spouses, helping military spouses get through the transition, as well as some of the bumps in the road and the hurdles that they have to deal with and the transition process. All in all. So with that, welcome to the show, Arena. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I just want to jump right into it and discuss real quickly about your role at Hire Heroes USA and what you do there.
So I am a transition specialist, and one of the things I do is I help transitioning service members and military spouses pretty much throughout their employment path or their job search journey. And that kind of starts with doing, our initial assessment, assessing their needs, then going to actually doing their resume, and then providing them all the additional services that they may require, such as upskilling, mock interviews, and we also do mentoring as well.
And that's one thing I do want to point out that people may or may not know from listening to a couple of the other shows. Hire Heroes USA is there for transitioning service members, but they're also there for the families and the spouses specifically. Do you ever get to do anything with the children, like the grown children of military members?
No, we don't get anything, with that. Hopefully one day we'll have a program geared towards because they also can face some of the similar challenges as well. But right now it's just pretty much like veterans and then the spouses.
All right. What challenges do you see from the military spouse standpoint when it comes to transitioning? We all know that the whole transition with the military side, you have checklists, you have outbound stuff, you need to do the military moves and all that. What challenges do you see from the military spouse side?
The biggest challenges that's always going to be there are the gaps in employment. A lot of times, sometimes I think people will have this stereotypical view that military spouses are perhaps uneducated or just don't want to work. And that's not necessarily the truth. A lot of our military spouses are highly educated, highly trained. However, they can't find the employment or employment sufficient enough that actually matches their skills and education level. So therefore, financially, it doesn't really make sense to take on a position. And also a lot of times with location, that's another thing. But the biggest thing is gaps. The next thing I would say is the confidence. Some of our spouses think, well, I'm just a military spouse, so maybe I should just settle. And I always tell my spouses, don't just settle, and don't believe the age-old belief that you just have to do anything just to get a foot in the door, especially when you're very qualified, to have the whole doggone body in the door. Don't just put your foot in there. So those are the biggest things that I see that I face, and it's hard because I've been in those shoes. I understand the frustrations. I understand the heartache, especially when you're a high achiever and you
Right.
don't feel like you're progressing, or you progress just enough and boom, you get those orders. And now you
Yeah.
have to start all back over again. It's pretty frustrating. But I think we do a pretty good job at helping them to navigate through it and to empower them, to let them know, no, whatever you want, we can help you to get there. Just trust us and, work with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost like you're playing a video game and you get to the highest level and you're like, man, I'm doing so good. The flow is excellent. And
Mhm.
then game over. You got to start from the beginning again. Hopefully what you've done transitions over directly to a new position wherever you all are moving. I can see that that's a huge frustration with the military spouse side.
It is.
Though I did want to ask though is like at least when I retired, when I was PCSing, I would have like a checkout checklist, right? Everything that I need to go through to kind of every wicket I had to hit in order to successfully either transition out of the military or PCS from duty station to duty station. To your knowledge, or maybe you may have something on your side, does that like a checklist exist for like the military spouse side to make sure that they're completely set up for success?
It doesn't, and it should. So thank you for that idea.
I got you. I got you, Rika.
It doesn't, and I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, that is darn brilliant. But there should be, there actually should be. But I think sometimes we get caught up in so much of the roles of the PCS that we only focus on the military checklist. We only focus, okay, we need to make sure we contact housing. We need to make sure that the kids have their records. We blah blah blah, all of these other things. Now, sometimes you can try to register, and I'm not sure if it's still in place now for the like PPP program prior to getting to your next duty station. It could have changed. I'm not sure right now, but there's still a possibility that you won't get a position, even when
Mm-hmm.
you get there. That happened to me. I was a GS employee in Hawaii. We
Yeah.
PCS to Campbell, couldn't get in, 3 years, and that 3-year period came. My preference just went away for as getting back in as a GS civilian and also priority spouse placement as well. Most definitely, there should be some type of checklist prior to.
I'm full of ideas, so anything you got, filter through me, and then I'll help out. I'll just throw things out there. No, and that's good. The checklist thing is awesome because I know it helped me immensely. And if something like that could be created for military spouses, I know like it gives them, I believe it would give them like a sense that things are actually moving smoothly on their side versus, just
Mhm.
having to latch on to whatever the checklist is that the military member is doing and hoping that everything's going good. At least on their side, they could say, hey, look, military move is going good while this guy or a girl is taking care of this stuff, outbound stuff. I can take care of this stuff.
Mhm.
Now, another quick question I had about this whole, the whole military spouse thing. So I know you assist with, or your side of Hire Heroes USA assists with military spouses transition and all that. The education portion of it, because I know I've been reading around like these Facebook groups and stuff. I know that it's tough for the movement every couple of years when you PCS and all that. And a lot of it is, because they're taking care of a family, the ones who stay home or the ones who are working GS positions are in the middle of, doing schoolwork, whether it be on site, like at the local university. Do you all assist with any kind of certifications or education to assist the military spouses in the transition?
So right now, what we do have, we do offer Coursera for free.
Hmm.
On Coursera platform, they can also get things like project management through Google, cybersecurity, IT, those type of certifications as well. Now, one of the other things that I always tell my spouses and service members is to utilize Onward to Opportunity as well. That is through the University of Syracuse, the
That's right.
Institute of Veteran and Military Families. Their O2O program is amazing because you should not be paying for certifications when you most definitely can get those certifications for free. Now, I do know, and they'll have to go onto the website just to kind of look and see. But for us, when it comes to certifications, I believe they only do one, but they have a whole list. You know, also you can check the requirements for my CAA. That is I believe, through Military One Source. And you can get tuition assistance, but it's only up to certain grade levels or for regarding rank. So that's something else that they can check out as well. Now, Mil spouses also, especially if you have a service member who is 100% disabled vet, they can go to the VA and apply for I believe it's Chapter 35 benefits as well in order to receive tuition assistance.
That's great information. I actually just sat through the O2O, the Onward to Opportunity meeting,
Hmm.
because I'm trying to look at doing the PMP, the project management
Hmm.
certification, and it was probably like a group of 14 folks on there on the Zoom call. And yeah, sure enough, there were military spouses out there who were doing the same thing. They were getting ready to transition, and they wanted to jump on the next cohort and whatever the next duty station is, right? And some of them were on their way over to where I am, Southern California. So they were just preparing themselves, for the upcoming one, like in March, or I think it's like every 3 months that they have a different cohort. Good thing you mentioned Coursera, because I'm knocking certifications out on Coursera myself. It's excellent, and
It
a great
is.
way for anybody to get certified. And they actually do. So Hire Heroes USA actually pays for the certificate, right? Like they give you access to it. Do they pay for the certificate as well?
No, just the course. So you'll
Okay.
have access for it. And, let's say something comes up because things are always going to come up and you may not be
Sure.
able to get it finished within a certain amount of time. You can
Right.
request like a 6-month extension as well. So that's another great thing. Now for other certifications as well, there is another nonprofit called Act Now Education. And they are all about telling military spouses and veterans how they can earn certifications for free. You can follow them they're on Facebook. The group is pretty huge. And they're also on LinkedIn as well. So when you're looking at those certifications, that's another way. Now, hiring our heroes, which is through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they also have things like fellowships as well for military spouses, for veterans. If you're interested in, let's say, becoming an admin with Salesforce, they also have Salesforce where you can do a fellowship with that and actually start interviewing also. Because we do get a lot of clients who are interested in changing career fields, and a lot of times they are interested in tech positions because of the remote aspect of that. So that's really huge right now. And there's so many programs, like I said, who are offering, those things for free.
And on the Coursera note, like as you mentioned, like PMP and project management and things like that, but they also have a lot of coding
Hmm.
programs in course. There's tons of stuff in Coursera. If you search through the catalog, you can do language learning through there. You can do all kinds of things in there that are just, you wouldn't think of and you wouldn't have had access to like, 10 years ago. Now you can just do it on your phone as you're, walking around the house or doing whatever. So it's a really, really great program. There's a few online ones out there, but that one's really, really good.
Yeah. Now, don't forget about LinkedIn. So, military spouses and vets, they get LinkedIn Premium free for a year as well. And they can also check too, because I'm not sure if they've changed it for spouses, but typically with each PCS, you can go ahead and get another LinkedIn for free. However, I get sometimes clients who are very hesitant about social media. I don't want to do LinkedIn. I don't da da da. Don't worry about that. You can also just go on there just to do the learning aspect because you can generate those certificates, those LinkedIn learning certificates, and just add them to your profile. Even if you don't want to put them on your profile, just put them into your little, I still have my I love me binder. So into your little I love me binder or something like that. So you'll have it. Because again, it's free education.
Yeah, that's a real big stigma around social media in general. Like when you hear social media, everybody just lumps everything into one category, and it's not really
Hmm.
that. Like there's differences in how, I mean, if you just look at it on how you interact with social media yourself, you have a different persona on Facebook than you do on Instagram, than you do on TikTok, than you do on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very professional kind of oriented social media platform. And we've mentioned it on here before, and I'll just throw it out again. Like if you're not on LinkedIn actively trying to get out there, get in conversations, get in discussions, even if it's just a few times a day, right? You don't have to spend all day on there, but the more active you are on LinkedIn, not only the more you get in front of other people or potential jobs and people who can hire you, but you also get that little bump in the algorithm that we hate to talk about. And that gives you more reach as a person on that platform. So being engaged in that, I mean, if you can engage in Facebook every single day, why not get on LinkedIn every single day and just post something or write a little article or
Hmm.
get in a conversation and answer some questions or whatever you need to do. They have expert threads in there that you can be a part of eventually, and you can write small little blurbs and articles about things, and that just kind of expands your resume per se, because you're showing people like, not only am I qualified on paper for these specific things for this 2 pages of resume, but I'm also expanding on some of those topics and going in depth in some of those topics. So it's really don't fight or don't follow the stigma and think that it's social media. You can get out there and do a lot of really constructive and interesting things on LinkedIn. That, and you can build basically your resume on LinkedIn as well and have it there for everybody to look at. So
Yeah, and just
And
a caveat off of that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Victor.
no, I was going to say, I just noticed that, as I was transitioning out myself, I noticed that a lot of places are actually asking for the LinkedIn information. Like, please share it's part of like the application process, right? Not only do you have to submit a resume, you do an application, they ask you questions, please share your LinkedIn. And that was one of the things too with Onward for Opportunity. They asked for my LinkedIn information on there as well. I don't know if they go on there just to make sure, like, hey, is this dude actually who he is, who he says he is, or what? But it is a professional resume online. That's basically what it is. It shows you what your achievements are, your accomplishments. And I don't know that you necessarily need to put a photo on there. I mean, it could be anything, but at least a place to house all your certifications and your achievements. LinkedIn is awesome for that. That's especially what I use it for. I don't really engage too much in anything else. I've done some of the LinkedIn learning on there, but yeah, a place to house all your achievements. That's excellent. I'm glad you brought that up as well, because I know that was like something I was just thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a
Go
place
ahead.
too that even for spouses, let's say if you've had a gap in employment, but you're still very knowledgeable about your field. This is your chance to prove that you are a subject matter expert. Like you mentioned, John, create those newsletters, start talking about relevant topics, stay on top of some of the current events that are going on in the industry that you're either in or that you want to transition to. And, start putting those things out there, and the other thing is when you're making these connections, try to think about instead of saying, hey, I would like a job, right? Try to create those genuine connections. Hey, I saw, this new initiative that you were just involved in. I'm very impressed. I would love to connect. Start building those genuine, sure, your ultimate goal may be to ask them in about 6 months, hey, I heard about this opening, but at least learn a little bit more about them, in a sense, like romanticize them, right? A lot of times in my DMs, I'll get like, hey, can you do my resume for me? And I'm like, oh, that's in the connection request. And I don't have a problem assisting, but it's also about tact as well, right? So I'm more inclined to really respond to those that said, hey, my name is such and such. I'm transitioning right now. I'm having a few bumps in the road. Can you give me a little bit of advice? No problem. But when you're just direct, like, hey, can you help me do my resume? And it's like, whew, okay, that's a little direct. So, just think about that. Think about building those genuine relationships and be authentic, you know. And a lot of times, I think what hinders people from creating content on LinkedIn, which will ultimately help you if you want to prove you're a subject matter expert, is that they start thinking about communicating in a voice that's not theirs. So creating the content gets a lot harder. I'm a Southern girl. I have a Southern drawl. A lot of times I'll put in my content, hey y'all, you know, and it's easier to create content like that. So just kind of think of it in that way. Think of it as a way that, I'm using my voice and I'm going to create genuine and authentic connections.
Yeah, and if I could, I wanted to ask one thing about we talked about the PCS and kind of the checklists that Victor mentioned, which we're going to go ahead and trademark that and get that locked in. but
Typing now.
who can get the domain name faster? But I did want to ask specifically because I just had a couple guests on a little while ago, a husband and a wife, and we got deep into the woods about the military transition along with the spouse's military transition because of what we had been talking about here on the podcast before. And it just kind of stuck in my mind. And I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and try this out with a couple. And I found the perfect couple to do it with. But one of the things we discussed, and I wanted to ask your thoughts about it, is for those transitioning members who are maybe doing the 20 years or 25 years or whatever, they're retiring or they're doing a med board and getting out of the military. For the military members, they get the TAP process. Is there an equivalent that Hire Heroes USA is maybe thinking about doing or already doing that is something that the spouses can then benefit from and get like a similar type of week? It doesn't have to be a week long, but like a few seminars on structured transition out of the military, coming off of active duty or retiring or whatever it may be.
No, but there are classes for military spouses, like when it's coming to more of the, resume writing, applying for federal jobs, things like that. We do have a department that is strictly for military spouses as well there. We also have a team that's only for women veterans also. Now, I will say at TAP, a lot of times because I was also a TAP counselor at Fort Campbell, we did have military spouses who would come and sit in those classes with their service members. When my husband, when he retired, I was right there in those classes, sitting there, VA benefits, learning about like learning these things with them. The most beneficial class also that I would tell spouses to join in is when you go through TAP, they have, and they may have changed it, but it was called financial planning, right?
You
Sit
still
in
have it.
that class. Yeah, because sometimes your spouse may forget to add some of those things onto the budget, right? And that way you can nudge them and be like, hey,
Yeah.
no, these are, we need to make sure
Yeah.
we add this, and to give you a realistic snapshot, because, we may have this fantasy that, okay, well, you know what? When we retire, we want to live in New York City, high rise, blah, 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 but we can't get that salary.
Mm.
Our bills won't allow it. And sometimes we have to be realistic and move to an area where we can afford, especially if you're trying to make sure that you're able to maintain the same quality of life. And sometimes you get stuck. And why am I saying that? Because as a veteran, when I got out the first time, I did not have a plan. There, back then it was ACAP. Um, so it wasn't nothing that was pushed on us to go. It wasn't like I knew nothing when I got out. So he at that time, I'm a single parent. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm a veteran, and everybody wants me. And I fell so hard on my face, and it was a hard couple of years till I had to raise my hand again and come back in. And then that's when I wind up having a plan. And when you fall on your face like that, is very hard, especially when you have this clear path that's kind of laid out for you when you're in the military and you come into this new world, even as a civilian, coming out into the civilian world when you're trying to pay now copays and things like that. It's a weird new world. It really kind of messed with my mental health a little bit, because I was like, I was this in the military and this, and now I'm like at the bottom, but when I got out the last time, I was like, okay, I started my transition from the time I came back in, saying, this is what these are the things that I'm going to do. So when it's time for me to get out again, I'm going to be prepared. And that's how I had to think about it, all the way through, because things could happen. Like you said, sometimes you may wind up getting med boarded. You may not make the 20 years. Start early and start thinking about those things.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that a lot of folks encounter, is not preparing soon enough. At least people that I talk to, like on the military retirement group, and other veterans getting out, their main question is, when should I start preparing for the transition out? Just to make it easier, I'd say, hey, just 5 years. If you're going to make it a career, maybe start preparing, looking ahead, but really doubling down maybe 5 years prior to make sure your finances are good, make sure you don't get out with any debt, make sure that you have some kind of a career field that you may want to get into in mind, and start working towards that. Because,
Mhm.
like for me, I got out, I had a vision of where I wanted to be. But then once you get out, if you don't stick to that plan, it's like, everything's fair game. It's like, man, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up now, so I had to stick to my plan. It was kind of hard to go outside of those bounds a little bit, but the retirement gives you the freedom to explore a little bit too. So, but yeah, definitely 5 years
Mhm.
prior to, I think, is a good starting point. I think in doubling down, make sure your medical stuff is good, making sure that finances are good, choosing a place where you want to live. I know that's a big question, like you just mentioned New York City. Your finances may not cover a high rise on Park Ave or whatever. So maybe you need to move to Tennessee or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
But really looking at finances, really being realistic on, how many kids do we have? How much money do we need for a mortgage, to eat? Really putting things on paper, I think helps out families.
And to leaders, the leaders who are probably listening to this podcast as well, talk to, and I'm going to say your troops, talk to them also as well, incorporate those things, Army, so sergeant's time training or something, just a little bits here, just to kind of, start planting the seeds a little bit early, because sometimes, and I would see this a lot when the soldiers are transitioning, it's like, what do I do now? I don't have my sergeant here. No one's here to tell me anything. Take care of them while they're in, but prepare them also for when they get out. And I think that will be beneficial also.
And we hope that there's a lot of leaders out there listening or continue to listen at this point to the podcast, because that's a really great point you bring up. Like, there's a lot of proactivity that you can do now, even for the troops that are in, or your airmen, or your sailors that have been in for 5 or 6 or 10 years. Like, they can still benefit from some of this stuff. And if you deliver it in a way that's not like reading off the PowerPoint slide and going through the motions, but if you actually put a little bit of effort into it and a little bit of passion into it, you can really deliver the message. And just, it seems like you're hitting it repetitively, like we do on this podcast. We hit a lot of things repetitively over and over and over. And there's a reason for that, is because sometimes it takes you hearing it like 10, 20, 30 times. As you said, you got out, you did the ACAP process, which I was blessed enough to go through that process as well one time in my life. And you fell on your face for a couple of years, and then you got up, and then you dusted yourself off, and you got back into the military and came at it with a different perspective. So really, yeah, just getting that message out there. I mean, there's organizations out there, like there's warrant officer groups for all different branches. I know there's like a petty officers organization for the Navy. There's different organizations for the different branches of the military. But getting that message out there, and that's why we're trying to point people in the direction of Hire Heroes USA, because the folks at Hire Heroes USA are doing things that really nobody else is doing, and they're doing it for free. So it's a very low bar to entry, and it's very, very helpful. It's been, the 80-20 analysis on it is ridiculous. It's more like 90-10, right? So that's definitely a great point that you brought up about that. I did want to ask about the spouses. Let's say that the military members got out of the military, they've been out, they retired, and maybe they decide to get remarried after they've exited the military. Do you also include those spouses, and what kind of like conversations do you have with those new spouses that maybe haven't been in the military for 20 years with their spouse and are just entering into a relationship with somebody who's now retired or exited the military for whatever reason? Are they still able to get access to those resources as well?
So are you talking about the spouses who divorce?
I'm saying, well, yeah. So the divorce. Let's split it into two questions: the divorcees potentially, and then say the military member gets remarried, and their new spouse. What would they still have the same kind of access? And are there any kind of new military member spouse conversations that you happen to have with somebody who's, say, remarried after 10 or 15 years?
A lot of times, to be honest, they're kind of like the same conversations. A lot of it is, what is it that I do? I'm still trying to figure out my role. I'm still trying to have my career, but I still need to make sure that I'm supporting my spouse as well. That kind of just intertwines, and then a lot of it is I have spouses who feel as though the feelings that they're feeling of frustration, that they shouldn't be feeling that way. That they feel as though that they're doing a disservice to their military spouse, or they feel selfish because they want the career.
Mhm.
And I really have those talks with them. It's not selfish. I've had, sessions with clients who are crying on the phone, with me because of the way that they're feeling or that they're so frustrated. Um, and, it's really the same conversation. I have spouses who, after their spouse has retired from the military, and their spouse is like, hey, babe, it's all on you now. You can go and, do your career and all of that. But they've been out of the workforce so long, there's like, I don't know where to begin, and they feel hopeless. And it's like, oh, no, 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 not when you're on the phone with me. We're not going to feel hopeless. Okay. We're going to pick that up,
That's when Ulrika comes
and this,
in.
that's where I come in because I'm like, look, I was like, look, Hud, I've been in your situation. Okay. We're going to pick that right on up. And I think it helps because a lot of them, when I tell them that I've been in their shoes before, they're like, really? Like everyone's surprised if I tell them that I'm a vet or if I tell them that I'm a mil spouse. It's like, really? Oh, okay. So and then they open up a little bit more. And that's the great thing I will say about Hire Heroes USA is that we have a community who really understands the military because a lot of us are either military spouses or we're vets, or, they have family members, who are vets. And even let's say you divorce your spouse, I don't, pause, because I'm going to say this real quick. I don't know if I should, but
No, go ahead.
we don't ask for any documents for a
Mhm.
military spouse to
Mhm.
verify proof of service because you don't have any, wink. So, go ahead and apply for services. We're going to help. We're going to help. Our organization so far has helped 85,000, okay, personnel secure employment, okay, for free, okay. And a lot of times, my spouses will say and my vets will say, "Are you like, what's the catch?" Like they're kind of standoffish in the beginning, and I'm like, "Look, we are a nonprofit. You're going to get these services for free. That can't be true." Oh, yes, it's true. You know, and we try to help everyone the same. We try to, talk everyone through, and just really be there. As long as you're a member of the military community, we're going to be there to help you.
Just this thing just came to mind, right? Like an MSM, you are a military spouse mentor, right? So if when
Look at you, Victor.
Two for two.
as yeah, as well, really as the actual member gets out, right? The service member has their mentors, right? As they get out, they get mentored via TRS. Maybe that's something that your organization, Hire Heroes, or any other organization can come up with, where you know the service member goes this way, the spouse goes this way, and we actually mentor the spouse via the checklist, right? Everything you need to do to
Mhm,
succeed. So there's a military mentor, and then there's the MSM, the military spouse mentor.
mhm.
So just ideas thrown out there. Maybe that could help out Hire Heroes and you guys. I don't know. Just
So
things that
we
come to
don't
mind.
separate their requests. So
Okay.
a military spouse may come in and say, hey, let's say a military spouse is like, I'm interested in going into cyber. I need to know the steps. These are some of the things that I'm looking for. We can actually put them in contact with a mentor as well. We
Okay.
have, thousands of mentors on our roster. They may even be as specific to say, hey, is there a way that I can get in touch with someone who is, transitioned into cybersecurity, who's doing very well, who is also a military spouse or either a vet? you know, we can try to make that happen as well. We have a volunteer team who I actually filter through and look at those things for them. So we really don't separate them. Like they have access to mentors as well. They can do industry specific.
Yeah.
They can do mock interviews. Like all of it's the same pretty much. hmm
Awesome.
The only thing that's different with the service is either we click that you're a military spouse or that
Mhm.
you're a veteran. And then we also, like I said, do have a male spouse team also, as well as like a women's veteran team is also.
Okay. So I want to go back to the 85,000 you mentioned. That is a huge number of people that you have helped, that your organization has
Mhm.
helped. So I applaud you all for that. Now, given the 85,000, I need to ask, what is the most popular type of career that military spouses get into as they're moving around that you've seen?
Ooh. Um, Honestly, I've seen some of everything. Um, the the biggest things that I would see a lot of spouses feel as though they need to just do like admin,
Hmm.
when they don't necessarily need to just do admin.
Right.
And I have one of the biggest things that I've had in shifts right now are military spouses who are educators who are going into things like cybersecurity. They're going into UX design. They're going into those fields as well. So a lot of my spouses have been getting out of education and they're going into those fields, or they're also doing things like Salesforce because they want that to be able to move remotely. So for me personally, as a transition specialist with my clients, that is the biggest thing that I've seen.
Yeah, that's excellent. I was just going off of too, like the cybersecurity that you mentioned, and that kind of ties into
Hmm.
Coursera and also like the OTO, O2O, and it kind of
Hmm.
all meshes well together. But having like a transient type of career would benefit like a cybersecurity, like Salesforce, UX, things like that. Yeah, I
Hmm.
just wasn't sure if there was like if you all kept like a graph or something on there that kind of shows what top careers that people are getting into, top career fields that they may want to look at that are very popular with military spouses. But no, that's good to know that that it's across the board. Folks are getting
Hmm.
into many remote jobs because that's really what what 2024 is about now. And what shoot, I'm even looking for one, at some point. No, I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
Hmm.
And if I could ask you real quick about you mentioned the mentors, and you said you have a pool of volunteers. If somebody wanted to become a mentor or work with Hire Heroes USA, is there like an application process, or is there somewhere you can point them to try to get started down that path?
Yes, if they go and log into our website, hireheroesusa.org, there will be a link for volunteer. And then the volunteer program coordinator would get in contact with them.
And is that a long process that they got to go through, or what's the turnaround time on that from start to finish look like?
I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure because I'm not on that side of the house.
Hmm.
But I do know, like, when clients, for us having access to the volunteers, I do know when clients put in their requests, usually within 48 hours, they're going to have an answer for them. You know, date, time, all of that, and availability for our clients.
And then, so let's go ahead and switch over to preparation. We wanted to hit on this and want to kind of go through it. And this kind of lines up with what we do as far as preparation for transition for military service members, but preparation for the spouses specifically. What kind of preparation steps do we need to have them look at, and what are maybe the one or two preparation steps out of all the preparation steps that you can think of that are the levers that allow them to take those leaps in their path to transition?
I think the biggest thing is going to be figuring out what is it exactly that you're going to want to do once you transition to the next duty station, right? Some of us go to duty locations that have more opportunities than others, right? So, for instance, when I went to Hawaii, I had a whole lot more opportunities available than, let's say, my family member who went to Fort Stewart, Hinesville, Georgia,
Mhm.
and starting to look at those things early as soon as you get those orders, okay? Because if you're going to a very small town, you have to think that you're going to be competing with a lot of people. You're going to be competing with the locals, and on base, everyone's trying to get on base or a federal job or those contracting jobs. So start early and see, hey, maybe I can actually try to find a remote job that will allow me to move to that location just until I can kind of see if I can get a job like on base or locally and things like that. The other thing is thinking about how much are you willing or do you need to make for it to make sense in
Mhm.
order for you to start working. Because another thing too, a big whoopee is childcare, and especially if you have children, will there be availability for childcare? Will there be access for childcare? And that's also why sometimes remote is the best option. Some are like, listen, we're not going to be able to afford it, but I want to work. So maybe remote would be the best option also. And the other thing too is, the same thing along the lines with the budget, making sure that your budget is good prior to separation, that carries, I think that kind of carries along the lines. Um, the other thing I would say is for as a checklist is see if there are some groups that you can become a part of. Sometimes those are Facebook groups that are available at your duty location, your next duty station, and see if you can talk to some of those spouses. Hey, what does the current job market look like in that area? Is there anything that I can do in order to prepare prior to and start that networking? Because one of the things that I wish that spouses had when they go to the next location is a sponsor. Like when you go to your unit, you have a sponsor. Spouses don't have sponsors. That would be nice to have also. So if you establish those relationships in either those Facebook groups or those pages, those base pages and things like that, maybe you can find a sponsor prior to kind of help you navigate. And the other thing too, I would say, if you are going to be making a career switch, start prepping early. Start trying to get those certifications. Start trying to get that education prior to. Start trying to make a name for yourself. One of the other things I tell my clients too, especially when we're talking about the technology field, because a lot of times they say, well, Erika, I just completed my UX design course. I'm officially a UX designer, right? I said, okay, great, but let's create some projects as well. See if you can start putting those projects like on GitHub and things like that and connecting with people at the next duty station. Say, hey, are you looking for any UX designers? This is what I have to bring. Or that way you can also apply for those jobs too, those remote jobs. And you have a display of work to show that you're more than capable of doing those things.
If you don't mind me jumping down that rabbit hole real quick,
Mm-hmm.
since it's kind of like my specialty, I want to
Mm-hmm.
touch on a couple things that you said and just highlight those. The childcare thing is super, super important. It's really,
Yep.
really expensive. Even if you're on base, childcare is really expensive. And there's usually a waiting list that's 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. It's really,
That's right.
it's
That's right.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to jump on real quick was the sponsor that you mentioned about sponsors, not for the military spouse, but for the military member. We've even brought it up to the point here, talking about it in discussions with various people about sponsorship coming off of active duty. Like you don't get a sponsor coming off of active duty to walk you through the stations to get your DD 214. Really, it would make a lot of sense for that to happen, but that's really not the case right now. And then as far as the IT thing is concerned, I just want to touch on it real quick and then I'll pass the mic off. You're absolutely 100% correct. If you've got the skills, if you've taken the course to do UX UI design, or if you've taken the course to do some kind of coding or something like that, like even as you're taking those courses, you see it in the course that there's little projects along the way. What you need to do is go ahead and continue those projects into things that you actually enjoy, that you feel like need to be brought into the world, or even go out and find something that's really close to what you like, and it's maybe not going to be perfect, and try to redesign that and recreate that in your own way with your coding skills, with your UX UI design skills, which is user interface, user experience, for those who don't know what those two things mean. But yeah, you need to continually look for ways to create projects, create ideas, create little things that you've built, no matter how silly and how small they are, and put those out into the world, because you would be surprised that you create something that's just for you, that's solving your own problem, that's going to then be out there on LinkedIn or Facebook, and somebody sees it and says, wow, that's amazing. Like, how do I buy this thing? Victor's experienced it with his product before as well. It's just one of those things where you just keep putting it out in the world, and eventually you never know. Like, it'll either lead you to a job or it'll lead you to a business of your own.
People start biting after that.
Yeah.
So I did want
to put that on your
to touch on
resume.
that. Yeah, I did want to touch on that real quick. It's one thing that I found that maybe could be of value to some folks is even being open to interning. I think just to kind of get your foot in the door and at least learn the skill, because a lot of times, excuse me real quick, a lot of times you may have the education, but you don't have the actual on-the-job training, the experience, right? How do you gain the
Mhm.
experience? Folks don't really want to hire folks who don't have experience. Maybe stop by a shop, maybe stop by a store, a company. Hey, look, I can dedicate several hours to this. Can I intern with your company to just to get some experience? You know, they get you for free and you learn the skill, a valuable skill, and you get some experience. That way you can put that on your resume as well. Um, that's something that I've been playing with, and I just want to put it out there in the world too. Like, folks can do that. That's not, I mean, that's a thing. You know, you can just email folks and ask them, hey, can I assist you with this? I did it with a fabrication job or a company at one point, and they were happy to have me just because I wanted to learn how to do that. Um, and
Mhm.
Arika, I'm glad you brought up like the preparation stuff too. I know we were talking about that. One thing I would like to tack on there as well, and maybe you have some experience with, talking to military spouses about this, is looking at the TRICARE providers in the area. You know, some places are
Yes.
remote; they don't have
Mhm.
like a like Army hospital or Naval hospital nearby. And then you really have to look at, TRICARE Select versus TRICARE Prime. What really works best for you? Do you choose your own doctor? Do you use the military facility? So I know that's something that I was playing with on the way out. I talked to a lot of folks regarding that, like, hey, how do I do the insurance thing? How do I choose a TRICARE Prime versus Select? What does this all mean? And it really is dependent on how far away you are from a station versus, do you want to pick your own doctors? There's different prices for everything, so that needs to be factored, I think, into the entire budget, because I know one is more
Mhm.
expensive than the other as well. But I'm glad you
Mhm.
brought the other prep stuff up.
And that's just a tack onto that. Also, look into your because the premiums too that needs to be added, and you need to not the premiums. I'm sorry, the copays, because every time you go to the doctor in the specialty clinics, now you are paying those copays. That's got to come out your budget as well. And a lot of times, I don't think we think about that, until because a lot of times when you go to the doctor, I know in the Atlanta area, um, they don't charge you right away your copay. You'll get the bill later. So you may have forgotten that you went to the doctor 6 months ago and now you have these bills. If you have to have surgery, you have to think about those things. Well, will they cover the anesthesiologist? How much so you have to think about all these things, especially when it comes to that finance portion to add on to that, Victor.
Yeah, that's definitely a learned thing on the way out.
Hmm.
Like, you
Hmm.
you live in base housing, right, for 1 minute and everything is covered. Then you go move out somewhere else off base housing after you get out, retire, etc. And now you have to pay for utilities. Now you have to pay for insurance. Now, like, all these extra things that you need to think about, because the military is
Hmm.
this nice cushy bubble that kind of takes care of their people and all that. And hopefully they do, right? Depending on your command. And then you go out into the real world and you get a slap in the face. Hey, wake up. Now you have to do things for yourself because you are now an adult living in the civilian world. It is a realization that a lot of people aren't ready for. And I think, both the military and my spouse they need to kind of sit together. And I'm glad that there's folks like you that can kind of bring them into the real world and tell them, hey, look, you need to actually prepare for this stuff. Because if you're not, it's not going to work out well for you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask one more thing, and then I think we're good unless you've got anything else, Victor. But what I wanted to tack on real quick is your own private business that you're doing and your consulting and how that works and um, what it's about and how people can find it if they want to find it on the internet.
Oh, yes, sure. So currently my business is Radiate Success Consulting. I opened it up in 2017 and we're currently in the rebranding phase because before I was doing a lot more of the doing, which meaning doing the resumes, doing all of that. But I feel as though it's more beneficial now to educate because I believe that builds up more confidence in the job search as well. And also on the employer side is to create military programs for employers who are interested in bringing on like hiring initiatives for military spouses, as well as with veterans. But I've learned, especially with military spouses, that there are still a lot of stereotypes and biases that comes with being a military spouse. And I've experienced a lot of those, and I want to break those. And I feel as though actually getting in the companies and partnering with them, that we'll be able to make some headway in getting, more military spouses hired in, um, you know, employment that they're passionate about, as well as with veterans as well. So that's the direction that we're going. My website is www.radiatesuccessconsulting.com. There's still a little bit of construction on the site, so be patient. But that's where we're at right now. And I'm all over LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. If anyone ever has any questions or anything like that, you can find me on LinkedIn. My handle is Rika Urena, and I'm there.
That's great. I'll make sure that I connect on LinkedIn right after this as well. As we all know, that networks make the dream work. So you you got to continue that. That's a continuous thing. No, I'm glad you brought that up. RadiateSuccessConsulting.com. And when do you think it'll be completely up and running, the website?
I'm shooting for a date as of March the 15th.
Oh, okay. So right around the corner. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll make sure we get that in the show notes as well. Awesome. Yeah, nothing further from my side. It was excellent to have you, Rika. It was great. Wealth of information.
Thank you.
I'm sure that when we post this up, we're going to get more questions from military spouses, and we'll shoot that your way, and maybe we can even have you on the podcast again to maybe answer some of these questions that these folks have.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I love talking about this stuff. I love it.
Awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, and if we need to, we can definitely do a round 2, round 3. That's for sure. We've really enjoyed having you on. We really appreciate you being here with us, taking your time. P.S. If you need a web developer, a remote web developer, I know one here in Sicily that's available for hire. So,
Okay. Well, let me know, because look, me and Wix have been bumping heads.
Oh, no.
Not a Wix. Oh.
Look, they tell you to stay in your lane. I don't know how. Look, I just heard click and plug. So we've been struggling.
Nice. Yeah, we could take that offline. I just do have one real quick thing, actually 2 real quick things. For those out there who are listening, paying attention, tuning in, if somebody wanted to go and assist and get Hire Heroes USA to their next 85,000, is there a way that they can donate, I know we've touched on the volunteer thing as far as mentorship, but is there any other ways that they can get in touch with Hire Heroes USA to provide some kind of resources or whatever they have available to assist in what you all are doing on the ground there?
Yes, of course. So you can always go to our website, www.hireheroesusa.org, and there is a donation button up there as well. You can click to donate, because that is how we're able to help so many people and to be able to give back to the community is through donations. So we appreciate anything that anyone can give.
Appreciate that. And then, so the last question before we go, and we're coming into Super Bowl weekend, and I just want to find out if you have a prediction for Super Bowl weekend. By the time this comes out, the prediction will be over, so we'll get to see if you were right or not.
Is it Super Bowl or is it Taylor Bowl?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I forgot he was playing. I mean, all I've seen is just everything on Taylor, so I thought it was Taylor Bowl. I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
All right. Got it. KC. Nice. All right. Now we got that out of the way. Yeah. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking the time. And like I said, if we want to do this again, you're always welcome to come back. We can deep dive into whatever topics we need to, or if we want to discuss something, or if there's something pertinent that needs to get out quickly, for sure, we're here for you.
So awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me and trusting me on your platform. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. For everybody else out there in the internet, we definitely want to give you your time back. We don't want to waste the internet, so we will sign off. But if you need to find us, we're on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube, and we are on Wreaths across America on Wednesday evenings. You can catch us there, and hopefully on more and more platforms as we try to expand and grow. So thank you for listening in, and we will talk to you all again later.
Good stuff.